Welcome to Talmudic Treasures. Today we're learning Nedarim page 28, which discusses a situation where if a person is confronted with criminals, bandits, or even tax collectors, or for that matter, plunderers, and they want to be able to take your produce, you're able to say, I'm sorry, I cannot do this because all of this fruit, I'm making a vow to you that this is all truma. And therefore, I'm not just going to make a vow for no reason. I'm telling you that this food is unfit for your consumption. Only a Kohen is allowed to eat it. Or I make a vow, I'm telling you, it belongs already to the king. So the law is that even though the truth is you're supposed to be honest when you make a vow, but because you're in duress and you are possibly going to end up having all this money taken away from you, or all this produce taken away from you, so you're allowed to say this vow, which is called Nidri on sin, and therefore because of that, it's not considered to be a vow. And the good thing is, hopefully those people will walk away and not bother you, and you'll still be able to have all the things that you have. The difficulty that the Talmud asks is, there's a concept called Dina de Malchuta Dina, that whatever is the law in the country is the law. So I can understand you doing this if a bunch of criminals and bandits and crooks are coming to try to take your produce away. But one of the things were tax collectors. So if you're in a country in which there are certain taxes, so how could you do this trickery? Don't you have an obligation to pay your taxes? So on this, the Talmud says, you're absolutely right, but it's an unusual circumstance because we're talking about, first of all, possibly a tax which there is no limit. In other words, this person is just coming and collecting beyond the amount that they're supposed to, or that it was made up on their own. In other words, you have these people who are acting like they're doing something proper, taking taxes, but they're really doing it in improper manner, and they're taking a significant amount, not a percentage, not based on your income, not based on any legal concept, but they're just taking. In that situation, the Mishnah says, the Talmud tells us that you're allowed to say this and make this vow in order to be able to save all your things. But from here we see a very clear statement, and that is that as Jews, we have an obligation, of course, to adhere to the Torah, to follow the 613 mitzvot. But at the same time, the fact that we live in a country such as this one, the United States, which grants us great freedoms, including freedom of religion. So we are so fortunate to be able to live in such a country. And yes, living in a country requires that a person has to pay taxes. Now, the taxes that a person may encounter may be very, very high, and that certainly is the case for many of us. However, it's not considered to be a tax she'eno kitzva. It doesn't have an unlimited amount. There are set rules and laws. And therefore, the Talmud is clearly saying that you cannot say such a thing when it comes to a normal system of government in which has these rules and laws. So when it comes to paying taxes, this is clearly, as the Talmud says, Dina de Malchuta Dina. It's something that every Jew is required to do because that's what the country requires. And that's so when it comes to all laws. A Jewish person, and of course anyone who is a citizen of the United States, is required to follow the laws of that country. You may not necessarily agree to all the laws of that country, but the fact that you reside in that country, you have to follow its laws. And the Torah itself tells us that that is also the case. And so how important it is for a person to keep the Torah. But in order to keep the Torah also tells us that we have to adhere to and follow the laws of the country in which we live in.